Working as an island school teacher, I have observed how my students responded to the learning materials supplied by DepEd. Though some of them were quick to respond on those learning materials, most of them were impassive and cold to the contents and context of those materials supplied. And that got me thinking. On kinds of things like anatomy, photosynthesis, molecular bonding, for sure they are hard, but they are not impossible to learn. And I am firmly convinced that if my students were taught in a manner that gives them the sense of belonging inside a classroom, they will eventually become more responsive and will successfully learn the material to attain the standards of educational policy. After years of teaching, I came to the conclusion that what we need in education is a much better understanding of student learning from the cultural perspective, from the nature of the children. In fact, Piaget asserted on the stage of assimilation that learning must be relevant to the existing schema of the child in order for the new information to be assimilated. The relevance of these learning experiences to the schema of the child is a manifestation that the cultural background of our school children must be used in generating instructional materials like modules, strategic intervention materials or themes, or even lessons. Therefore, the culture is a very good medium to scaffold learning. In fact, the K-12 curriculum is culture-friendly. In culture-based education, it actually provides students the avenue to learn concepts in the context of values, norms, cultural beliefs, what else? Heritage, knowledge, language, and even experiences in the society. However, the integration of culture into teaching is not generic. It has never been holistic because culture-based lessons often deal with concepts regarding values, patriotism, belief system, and language. Attempts have also been made to integrate culture in lesson development like farming practices, fishing practices, festivals and games, dances, and even music. Results of these studies showed positive feedback from student respondents. Even though Korea, China, and India offer alternative and contemporary medicine, there are no documented studies that have been written to encompass the integration of folk medicine in teaching high school, particularly in science curriculum. Therefore, this study provides an avenue for students to develop their learning in biology in an approach that tackles their nature. This study proposed an innovative approach to culture-based education specifically to the students of Cagraray Island, and this study is entitled as Indigenous Medicinal Plants and Practices in Cagraray Island, Resources for Culture-Based Lessons in Biology. I am Michael Bibon, a science and research teacher at Cawayan National High School, Cawayan, Bacacay, Albay. So on the context of the study, Cagraray Island belongs to the municipality of Bacacay except for Barangay San Antonio and Salvacion. This island is connected to the mainland Bacacay by a bridge spanning the narrowest portion of Sulat Channel. Because of the geographical location of the area or of the island, it has brought many shortcomings in access to quality and modern healthcare system or facilities. And apart from the general shortage of personnel, the island residents' population has a wide range of illnesses for which even modern services are often not affordable or culturally irrelevant. These scenarios cause its locals to rely on indigenous medicine, which results in its abundance in the area. To address the ongoing issues in education and culture, the following research questions were established. What are the narratives on indigenous medicinal plants and practices of folk healers? What culture-based lessons in biology may be developed integrating the features of research results, active learning, problem-based approach, and the context or culture-based teaching? What is the effectiveness of the culture-based lessons in developing learners' understanding of biological concepts, metacognition, science process skills, and cultural appreciation? And what educational philosophy for culture-based learning can be called based from the findings of the study? For the results, or for methodology, in order to attain the answer for the following research questions, the following methodologies were conducted. For the identification of the medicinal practices, the research design is basically qualitative, using interview questionnaire. The sources of the data were the indigenous folk medicinal practices from the folk healers. For the development of culture-based lessons, the design is basically developmental, using an assessment tool for evaluation. The sources of the data were the evaluation results of the validators using mean. And for the development of the learning outcomes, the research design is a pre-test, post-test, pre-experimental design using Likert scales. The Likert scales were used to measure the development of cultural appreciation and metacognition. For test, it was used to measure or to assess the conceptual understanding in biology, and rubrics were used to measure the development of science process skills. The sources of the data were the scores in those assessments, and the respondents were the students using mean, percentage, and the Cohen's d. For educational philosophy, the same developmental approach was employed based from the findings of the study. Here are the results of the study. Illnesses recorded, like that of headache, fever, stomach ache, bone fracture, and even muscular weakness that receive prescriptions of medicinal plant treatment. Nonetheless, the illnesses like wounds, hypertension, anemia, cough and colds, and asthma were considered as a springboard for lesson development because these identified illnesses showed entry points or relevance for Biology 9 curriculum. This table cites the identified illnesses with its corresponding medicinal plants, scientific name, and medicinal practices. For wounds, folk healers suggested the use of kalunggay, dusol, bayawas, pait, rulatigo, and sabila. For treating hypertension, folk healers prescribed the use of bagangan, klitis, kalunggay, binungol. For treating anemia, ugbos, kamote, rabas na talong, mani, alugbate, uraro, mariguso were the prescribed medicinal plants according to the folk healers. Whereas for cough and colds, we have lagundi, oregano, muyuk-buyuk, kurokasitas, and kantutay. For asthma, medicinal plant includes kamangkaw, lakad bulan, tungaw-tungaw, balagon, palagtutay, and talupang. For the identified medicinal practices, medicinal plants for wounds were prepared through pagpires and pagtultog. It is applied in a form of panghugas and pangdapog. For hypertension, those identified plants were prepared in a form of pakalakaga and applied as pangtumar. For anemia, the preparation is in a form of kinilkig and pagtinum. Kinilkig is a mixture of other herbs, and it is applied in a form of pangtumar. For cough and colds, the identified medicinal plants were prepared in the form of pagbalad and paglanta and pakalakaga as well, and applied in a form of pangtumar and pangdapog. For asthma, the medicinal plants were prepared in a form of pagbuntog or pakalakaga and applied in a form of pangtumar. For the development of lessons, 5 culture-based lessons were developed. These lessons include treatment for wounds, treatment for hypertension, treatment for anemia, treatment for cough and colds, and treatment for asthma. This table presents the overall structure of the developed culture-based lessons where learning outcomes were expected to develop based from the lesson features or opportunities for learning. For conceptual understanding and metacognition, basically it makes use of opportunities like the integration of research results and active learning in order for these learning outcomes to develop. For science process skills, the use of experimentation as an opportunity integrated in problem-based approach was used in order to develop the science process skills of the students. For cultural appreciation, so basically it is simply the integration of the identified medicinal plants and practices in the locale which complements the development of the lesson. And also, a set of jurors have also quantified the degree of evidence of all the features in every lesson using the rubric scale from Berdeen. And based from the evaluation, lessons do contain the lesson features ranging from descriptive equivalence of evident to very evident. Okay, so in this table, it shows the result of the result of the implementation of the 5 culture-based lessons and the identified learning outcomes as to conceptual understanding, science process skills, metacognition, and cultural appreciation. So the pre-test and post-test showed a p-value of 0.00, which implies that there is a significant difference in the scores. Therefore, for conceptual understanding, the students were able to acquire the desirable concepts of the lesson. For science process skills, there is an improvement of those skills, as shown in the difference of the results. Whereas for metacognition, the summary of the study shows that the students became mindful of their own learning, whereas for cultural appreciation, the students became appreciative of their own culture. For the philosophy of culture-based learning, the culture-based learning basically requires the need to integrate hands-on activities grounded on locale's culture, which produce concrete evidences of the new information they need to learn. The treatise of the philosophy of culture-based learning stressed the significant role of culture, for it serves as the platform for learners to assimilate and understand the lessons more effectively. The significance or dialectic as a form of interactive learning is given impetus. Similarly, it highlights the affirmation or negation of previous culturally learned practices in a locale of the learners. So in conclusion, the richness of locale's narratives of illnesses vis-a-vis the abundance of medicinal plants that abounds in the area became rich entry points for lesson development for certain illnesses. Similarly, the treatment of some illnesses using the indigenous medicinal plants and practices was beneficial for lesson development that is culture-based. So here are the references of my study, and I am Michael Bibon, again a teacher at Cawayan National High School, Bacacay, Albay from Albay Division. And once again, thank you and good morning.